Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Advanced Segmentation Strategies for Omnichannel Marketing Precision. Audio is being provided via VoIP, voice over IP, so be sure to turn up the sound on your speakers. If you have any audio or technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget at the bottom of the screen. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. If you are unable to resolve the issue or have any questions during the webcast, you can click on the Q&A widget at the bottom and submit your question. We will try to answer all questions during the webcast, but may run out of time, so we'll reply via email after the presentation. Lastly, an on-demand version of the webcast will be available and sent to your email in the next few days. I'll now pass things over to Ken Inman, Vice President of Analytics here at Neustar, who will be presenting today. Take it away, Ken.
Well, I thank everyone for attending, and just to give you a little background on myself, Ken Inman, Vice President Analytics with Neustar. So I head up analysis and research and development of analytics-based technologies, consumer behavior targeting, segmentation for Neustar. So with that, I'll get right into the topic that we're talking about today. Again, it's to talk about advanced segmentation strategies, how they're used, and how Neustar thinks about this. And to give you a little perspective on that, I'll just talk first about data. I mean, you can't do anything without it. And in our world, data really is synonymous with opportunity. It's filled with all the possibilities, and it's kind of the core or the base of what we do and what we're all about. And at Neustar, the whole idea is taking this and turning it into turning the possibilities into reality. It's providing the game-changing solutions that allow organizations to drive growth. And in today's environment, the things that you need to do effectively are react to change. As a marketer out there, information is shifting on a constant and daily basis. So there's no kind of solid foundation a lot of times. I mean, people are changing their phone numbers, they're changing their identities, online and offline, behaviors, and the things that you're trying to predict and understand about people are shifting as technology advances. And so, it's making sense of all that information and data, bringing it together in a core structure or framework that makes sense for you to use in driving your business, and it's keeping up with that change. So that's what advanced segmentation strategies is providing the infrastructure to support, really, and that's going to be one of the points of this of the presentations we go through. This is kind of how it weaves in to empowering evolutionary change and allowing you as marketers to do what you need to do most, and that is kind of manage and drive growth in your business. So by the numbers for Neustar, we are an information services company, and really we all are about empowering change and driving that in an organization. So just to give you a little bit of background, Neustar is a little less than $1 billion in revenue, about 15,000 employees, but taking the notion that data is core to what we do, you can see that we manage a lot of information that flows through our systems. And one of the key things here is it's not just the data and information that's flowing through our systems, but it's the marketing intelligence that comes out of that data and information. And what we're doing is driving real-time intelligence for consistent omni-channel marketing across a broad range of industries. So we're serving ad tech, retail, financial and banking, real estate, auto, cable operators, MSOs, telco, insurance, lead generation. And in today's evolving marketplace, it's not just serving the marketing or the CMO's organization, but as we all know from looking and listening to the media these days, it's also about security. And one of the trends that we see and that we're very cognizant of in the solutions and the strategies that we develop is the linking together of both the security and the marketing operations. You can't be successful in marketing today unless you're also protecting the underlying information and data you're using to drive that marketing. In other words, the privacy and the security of the information you have about customers. And customers have to be satisfied that both the marketing efforts that you're doing are relevant as well as done in a safe and secure way. The agenda for today, the topics that we're going to cover is talking about our philosophy in how all of this works and why it works, and I have a few examples of how. To kind of get this started off, I just want to kind of reiterate some of the core points that really are relevant when you think about advanced segmentation and integrated analytics, or some of the core principles that you should, or some of the core takeaways that you should have after we go through this. So analytics and segmentation strategy, kind of two things. There's the customer framework, and then there's the marketing or the spatial framework. And out of that, to have an effective and kind of integrated solution, you need to worry about kind of the messaging or the marketing side of it, how predictive of the behaviors that you care about the solution is. It needs to be available in real time, so you need it when you're talking or engaging with your customers, and it needs to be cross-channel, linking known with unknown outcomes and information, and it does need to be grounded into markets. As we go through this, we'll hit on these points and talk about exactly how it works to drive those kinds of outcomes. But first, to kind of set the stage, again, just to go back to our philosophy, it really, at the end of the day, it's making the complex look easy, really, and that's the ultimate value of a successful strategy is kind of solving the important problems. And just like when you see somebody hit a home run, they drive that ball out of the park and everybody gets excited, and you just think, well, it looks so easy as the ball sails out of the ballpark. But when you break it down, it's really extremely complex. There's mechanics, there's training, obviously there's experience that goes into all that. The same is true of an advanced segmentation strategy, and being able to be successful at doing that. For us, these strategies are a backbone and core that enables seemingly simple solutions to marketing problems that are, in fact, very complex. In other words, we're answering questions and saving our clients from the headaches of trying to solve those very complicated marketing applications by integrating all of the information and data that's required to successfully meet and market to your customers, curing headaches and those problems for a broad range of industries, from the telco to the ad tech, to banks, to finance, to major wireless carriers. Again, tying together CRM data to primary research, linking customers to prospects, providing a timely and simple view of the competitive landscape. And all of this has to be done in a way that that is reliable, safe, and secure. So a lot of hard work, just like hitting a home run, goes into making marketing really look easy. And kind of a case in point that I can use to illustrate this quickly before we get into to the meat of it is if you think about sports and you think about LA and San Diego. So I'm in San Diego. I'm from San Diego. But if you look at this, you know, there are all these sports rivalries that are out there. LA and San Diego is a common one. You know, I'm sure there are Dodger fans out there. There are Padres fans, I hope, as well. But this is a pretty fierce rivalry. And you know, if you look at what goes on, it's like, you know, these teams just simply don't seem to mix. You know, and really are these teams really so different, and the markets they serve and the customers that they serve so different that they can't get along? Is this really necessary? And how different are they? And how would you do the analysis to figure out those differences? Well, to dig into those things is actually a fairly straightforward application of analytics and an application of a segmentation strategy. And behind this kind of an analysis, you are seeing kind of how the underlying building blocks of the segmentation strategy come together to answer these questions. You're doing things such as profiling customers, linking media to the demographics. You're looking at market potentials and tying things to the markets that are being served, be those online or offline. And you're doing analysis of locations and markets. And so the question is, you know, are these places really so different that they can't get along? And if you go and think about it, well, one of the first things that you have to do to be able to do this kind of analysis is look at the appropriate definition of the market you're serving. Again, this is a geographic definition because we're talking about the Padres fan base and the Dodger fan base. This is some basic analysis looking at a 45-minute drive time around the stadiums to look at the markets that these serve. And so, you know, step one is kind of tying a solution or an analytic solution back to the market. It could be online, it could be offline. In this case, it's an offline kind of spatial market. And then using or having some analytics that will help you understand what's going on in that market. And so in this case, we're looking at a segmentation of the marketplace to understand the households that reside in those markets and looking at a behavior. In this case, we're looking at the fans or people who have attended a Major League Baseball game. And so you have to start with some kind of underlying analytic structure that you can put the behaviors in the appropriate context to try to figure out who is behind those behaviors. Again, a segmentation strategy is allowing you to do all that. And out of this analysis, you can start to build that audience up and understand who they are. And so here's kind of the basic audience that you're creating and some of the demographic characteristics that go along with that, talking about their age, kind of income, you know, presence of children, some standard demographics that go along with the audiences that would be interested or be the fan base for the Padres and the Dodgers. But, you know, then what you need to do is compare and contrast. So, again, you need to go in and look at the underlying characteristics and, again, start to build out the differences in these two audiences based off of an underlying analytics framework. And in this case, you know, some basic differences in terms of the sizes of the markets, income, home values, and then some interesting attributes like beer or consumption, wine consumption, how much people are spending on sporting events, you know, just for fun, a few things like hair pieces, cosmetics, perfume, and bananas. We see like they're spending a little more than $55 per household on bananas in San Diego, or no, LA. And it's about $52 in San Diego. Looks like people are spending more on, slightly more on cosmetics and also on wigs and hairpieces in the LA area as compared with San Diego. San Diego is spending a little bit more on admissions to sporting events and so on. So again, it's having an analytics infrastructure that allows you to kind of build out these audiences, and then taking it beyond that, talking about some other things that are related to the sporting events that we're talking about here. Up in the LA area, hockey is relevant, whereas in San Diego it's football. Although if you follow the Chargers, it may not be football, I guess, in the near future. But at any rate, at least the analytics right now show that there is a fan base for NFL football in San Diego, more so than actually up in the LA market. Other activities, San Diego, more yoga, so we're a little more laid back. Up in LA, it's like they're a little more in your face with the boxing thing. And then, wines, so Spanish reds in LA and Italian reds in San Diego. But, tying together all this information in a place that you can get access to it to help solve those questions and those marketing things that are relevant to you being better in doing your job as a marketer. And so at this point, presented a bunch of information, a bunch of data, and so it is important to step back and realize, how did all this come about? What was the source of all this information, and how did we do the analysis? And I'll tell you that if you've got the right framework, this kind of analysis flows out of that framework. It shouldn't be hard to tease out these kinds of insights if you've got the right strategy and framework in place. And in this case, to tease out these insights and such, we leveraged an underlying segmentation framework that tied together a lot of disjointed databases to come up with this information. So, some people, when you ask them, how do we do this, they think that we've got this file that has every individual in the U.S. in it, and I know exactly whether or not you bought a bottle of Italian red last week or Spanish red, and all the sports shows or events that you went to. And so if you think about that for a minute, though, it's just totally unrealistic. No database like that exists, and there's no way that you can do it. And so the way that these insights come about is through analytics and having an underlying infrastructure and strategy that allows you to get access to that information in a way that is usable for solving the problems that are in front of you. And so, with this, it's like, well, okay, so is this enough to cause a fight? Well, I don't know. There's definitely a competitive, spirited exchange between Dodgers and Padres fans when they get together. I like to think it's all in fun, but it does spill over onto the field every once in a while as tempers do flare. And then the next thing you do need to think about, if you're marketing and if you're involved in trying to understand how to reach the fan bases here, it's not just the total market, the total drive time, 45-minute drive time that we put up there initially, but it's actually looking within those markets to highlight, in this case through a thematic map, kind of where the pockets are that really contain kind of your core market. And you need to be able to do this to effectively allocate your spend if you're trying to reach them. And it's also about understanding locations. So you need to tie it back if you if you had a distribution network of locations, either stores, or if it was online, this would be distribution through websites. But you need to be able to rank and kind of look at those various locations to figure out how they score relative to each other. And in this case, we're scoring all of the major league we scored all the Major League Baseball locations, sites, stadiums in the U.S., and I have a few of them listed here, and this is relative to LA. So this is talking about if you were to take the LA Dodgers and put them in another market, how well would they do in that market given the characteristics of the market they currently serve. And so in this case, LA, you can see, is site score at 100. So that means LA is doing as good as they are. A market where they could actually do better would be in the New York market. Relative to San Diego, if you brought the Dodgers to San Diego, they wouldn't do as good as they're doing in LA. So there is some reason to believe there are differences in the fan base and how the Dodgers are marketing themselves. And in San Diego, the fan base is slightly different. So New York, and then the places where the LA Dodgers wouldn't do as well based off of the markets and such would be places like Kansas City, and Milwaukee. So with that, I want to shift it now and start getting a little more serious about talking about, well, what does it take, and what does it mean when we talk about a segmentation strategy, and kind of what are the things that really make this work, and what do you need to be aware of. When you think about this, these are the things that we're going to hit on as we go through defining this strategy. It's these things around the outcomes that you have to be able to support if this solution is going to be successful. So the first part of it is just thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve here, and understanding that there is an analytics framework that is well suited to solve these kinds of problems. And if you look at what you're trying to do, there are two dimensions to this. One is kind of the marketing side of it, and that's how do you message people, how do you talk to them. It's those attributes that they bring with them as they come to you as a customer, things like their age, their lifestyle, are they homeowners, the kinds of neighborhood they live in. It's those things that you as a marketer really don't influence about somebody when they come to you as a customer. It's the stuff that they bring as part of being who they are. And then the other dimension are the behaviors that you want to target. These are the things that you want to influence. So there's two dimensions to this analytics framework that you need to be aware of. There's the marketing side of it, and then there's the behavioral side of it. There's the things that you want to try to influence, and the things that you're trying to successfully manage so that you can meet the needs of your customers as well as grow your own business, and generate the revenue growth that you need to. And as you develop this kind of an analytics strategy, some of the uses of it that you need to pay attention to make sure that the solution is going to support the outcomes that you need, it's going to be actionable. One of the first things that it needs to support are the ability to market to people no matter where you see them or when you see them. So cross-channel marketing is a very core and key piece of any marketing solution today. I talked earlier about how dynamic markets are today, and how things are shifting and changing. Well, part of that is the fact that your customers can present themselves to you across a broad range of channels today. You can see them online, you can see them offline, you can see them in your call center, you can see them standing in front of you in a retail outlet or one of your storefronts. What you need to do to be effective and efficient is make sure that you're consistent in marketing to them. I'm the same person whether you see me online or whether you see me in your call center. So your marketing message should treat me the same. It shouldn't shift based on that specific channel that you see me in. If I'm a good customer for you, I'm a good customer and somebody you want to treat consistently in all of those channels. And so you need to be having a way to action upon this analytics framework you've created so that you can do that consistent messaging across all of your lines and channels. And not only that, but you also need to have a solution which is going to be providing linkages to the data that you need to make those connections. So it's important that your analytics framework kind of reach outside your own four walls. You have a wealth of data internally if you're like a telco, a wireless service provider or something. You've got tons of information about the phone calls that people are making within your network. You've got bills, you've got services, you've got the kinds of phones. You've got this huge CRM database with a wealth of knowledge and information, but it still is limited from a marketing standpoint. It doesn't help you understand who people really are. It tells you what they are within your four walls, but it doesn't go outside and tell you, well, okay, these people that are my most profitable customers are also very likely to drive these kinds of vehicles or visit these kinds of websites. It doesn't give you the competitive intelligence that you need to be able to understand how you're doing with those core customers relative to your competition. So you have to have solutions which will allow you to link your internal behaviors to those external databases and information that are out there to build out that complete marketing picture of your customers so you can be effective at managing it. So an advanced omnichannel segmentation strategy is one which allows you to tie together all of this information, knowns to unknowns, right, building out this portrait of who your customers are, as well as reaching out to them across any channel. It has to accommodate all those kinds of activities. And so the way we think about it or operationalize this kind of a framework is by looking at a partitioning of space. And I'll give you a quick example of how this works. But you need to have a flexible or extensible analytics framework. And it organizes things along the dimensions that we talked about, where you've got your marketing and your behavioral dimensions, and it accounts for those things in the exercise of creating that analytics framework. And just to kind of show you, since I'm a statistician at heart, and I always feel it necessary to justify my life with a few equations. Here's kind of the general algorithm that lies behind this. And so the basic idea is you're looking at a partitioning of the marketing space and putting behaviors into that context. And by a partitioning, is just if you look at a big Excel spreadsheet, each cell is a partition. So you're grouping the marketing space into cells and then putting behaviors within those cells. And as you do this, you want the behaviors within a cell to be as similar as possible. Those are the things that you're trying to influence, but you're putting them in the context of the marketing dimensions that you're going to use to try to cause those behaviors to change or to understand the behaviors you care about. And as a kind of I'll run through this kind of quickly as a simple two-dimensional partitioning, just to kind of show you how this actually works, how we operationalize it. Like I said, think about two marketing dimensions, age and income. So these are the attributes somebody comes to you with for developing this. The interior numbers in the cell is some behavior, so it's the likelihood to buy home insurance or life insurance or something like that, for example. And you can see within this the rates differ or vary. Now the game here, the objective, is to find combinations of the behaviors that you can make across these dimensions for the marketing dimensions. But you want to do that in a way that, you know, likes to likes. So you don't want to compare or combine somebody who has income under 20,000 with somebody whose income is above 100,000. From a marketing standpoint, you're most likely going to want to treat them differently. Or age is another. You don't want to combine somebody that's those households with age under 24 with those over 65. Very different marketing dimensions. And so as you go through this partitioning, you're doing an exercise where you're finding similarities in behaviors as well as commonality across the marketing dimensions. And so you could see a process going through and iteratively finding the most similar dimensions in this matrix or in this spreadsheet and making the combinations as you go, combining likes to likes until you've partitioned the entire space. So then you come out with a result. And in this case, if you look here, you've got a segment at the top. You know, these are income under 50,000, age under 24, you know, and they have similar penetration rates for the behavior that we care about. And then we've got another segment here, kind of an L-shaped, you know, 49, 49, 47. And so, you know, you go through this exercise of creating a set of groupings or households that both have internally similar behaviors as well as similar demographic characteristics and attributes. And this kind of a framework works to allow you to create a structure now where you can go and use it to tie in all of the relevant information and attributes that you need to be able to achieve the marketing goals and the things that you need to do from a marketing standpoint. So again, an omni-channel advanced marketing or segmentation strategy, you need to worry about the underlying analytic structure of the solution you're building. It has to be extensible, it has to be flexible, and it has to tie back to a broad range of underlying data sets. So using marketing dimensions to ground it or to kind of be fundamental, and then the behaviors put in the context of those marketing dimensions is a strategy that works to make a solution that is actionable and that can be extended. And this kind of a framework extends out then to the spatial side of kind of what we're doing. If we go back and think about the LA Dodgers and the San Diego Padres, you know, that was definitely putting the segments or those fans that are most likely to be interested in a baseball game in the context of their market. So it has to tie back to those markets, and it has to do that in a consistent way. So you need to be able to look across markets, within markets, or at specific sites from a geographical standpoint. The same is true if you take solutions online. You need to be able to look across the various properties where you would be running campaigns and have a way to understand who is visiting those properties, kind of the visitors that are there, the unknown users that show up, and how they fit into the context of your customers or the underlying analytics that you care about or want to use to market to them. So it's an underlying spatial structure, or in general, it's an underlying structure that is extensible across the channels in which you want to use the solution. And so it kind of goes back to really at the core of all this, you know, making a solution that works for your customers, and you know, it gets back to our underlying philosophy of really making it look easy. So delivering this analytics framework that our customers can use so that just like hitting a home run and making it go over the fence looks easy, the marketing side of the business works, and it allows our customers to focus on better serving their customers and driving their bottom line. They're not out there having to develop all these core capabilities themselves. They have the underlying infrastructure to support their business to drive the growth that they need. And so next thing I just want to go over and talk a little bit about what does this look like. So in practice, what are the kinds of things that come out of this kind of analysis, and what are the important things that you'll see as you, if you're successful in bringing a strategy like this about. And one of the first things is pretty common to any exercise that a company goes through as kind of a first step in building marketing plans and such. It's just getting a clear understanding of who your core customers are, what they look like, and again, this is where it's key to have an analytics framework or a segmentation strategy that extends the data outside of your own four walls, right? This picture clearly is partly about what they look like to you as a customer, right? But it's also important to understand what they are beyond just that. What are their demographics, lifestyles, hobbies, media profile? Where are you going to find them? In print media, on the radio, on TV, in digital media. What properties do they tend to frequent? And so all of that information is important to building out that overall marketing plan that you need to have to be effective in terms of engaging with your customers and clients. And this can drive various media strategies. In this case in point, you could be one product, obviously different audiences. And so, again, you've got to be able to kind of understand the kind of the core markets you're serving and what messages will resonate with them. We have companies that do things like this in designing the creative that goes into it. You will have companies that are using these segmentation solutions and strategies to define kind of their underlying look and composition that they show up on a web page. So you go onto a web page, and they need to decide, well, in terms of what you're like, what do we want to make the website look like, and what products do we offer, and what kinds of images do we serve up. So and the segmentation strategy that's been created can provide the underlying information so that you can understand how to approach people when they come onto your property, online, offline, and also into your call center, exactly how to approach you when you show up in a call center. It can be used for competitive purposes. So if you are a device manufacturer, for example, and this is analysis around the Galaxy S5 by carrier, it's important to understand who's buying certain devices as well as what carriers they're actually using them on. And so, as a device manufacturer, you may know a little bit of something about who's buying your devices, although in fact it's the carriers that have that, not the manufacturers. But it's gaining that competitive intelligence and knowing, okay, here's the kinds of households that are buying and using a specific mobile device by carrier, and understanding those marketing dimensions so that you can better message and target them, and knowing where those differences exist to get the competitive understanding that you need to serve the market. It's tying that back to switching behavior. It's not just in the wireless industry and such, but everybody has to try to manage churn. You want to retain your best customers, and you want to try to go find or win back or win over those customers from your competitors. So again, it's extending outside your own database, having a framework and a strategy that allows you to do that, and be able to look across various dimensions and tie that data together. In this case, we're talking about likely iPhone switchers who also are likely to be Galaxy S5 users, and kind of understanding the marketing mix or the demographic mix of those households. You could also extend this out to link to media, so you could understand where to reach these, or the most effective channels to use to try to reach these kinds of households. And it's also taking this, and presenting it in a fashion that it can be used by an organization or a company. In this case, you've got a GIS interface into the data so that you can go in and you can look at various markets and presenting information over here about those markets based on the composition of that market. Again, the analytics framework that drives these kinds of solutions, is core to making this actionable and information that can be used to understand competitive market share. Wireless industry, everybody compares about competitive market share, though, whether you're in the wireless industry or whether you're, a big box retailer or, a coffee shop or something, a national coffee shop. You do have to worry about your competitive presence and your market presence and how the competition is doing. Things are evolving quickly in the marketplace, and so that changes. And it's also not just looking at the market itself, but it's going in and looking at the composition of that market to understand who is behind the flows that you see in and out of your organization. In this case, flows from Carrier 3 to Carrier 1. So this is the kinds of households that Carrier 3 is losing to Carrier 1, their characteristics, and putting them in the context of how valuable are these customers to Carrier 3. In other words, how much should you do to intervene and stem this flow, and can you stem this flow? If these are folks that simply aren't necessarily your core customers or really interested in your services, maybe it's going to be very hard or expensive to stem this flow. If they are, then you would, you can make decisions appropriately. And then the flip side, you can look at the other side to see who you're getting from Carrier 1. So these flow type scenarios, the way you get this information is by, again, tying data that you can collect about switching behavior back into an analytics framework that you can use to take action on that data, on that information. And then you can extend this beyond simply those demographic characteristics and attributes, but then start to look at other things, like you want to do analysis around ethnicities and switching by ethnicity, things of that nature, to understand your Hispanic presence and that. And so you can talk about, well, which carrier am I most likely to lose Hispanics to? And in this case, Carrier 3 is more likely to lose their Hispanic customer base to Carriers 4, 5, and 6. The flows into Carriers 1 and 2 in this case tend to be non-Hispanic. And so, again, it's just being able to position yourself to be successful in the marketplace. These are the kinds of insights that you have to be able to support with your underlying analytics framework or your segmentation solution. And then you can also tie it in to media to understand, okay, well, how do I intervene to do this? And then looking across markets to understand where these pockets of switching are occurring, drilling into markets, in this case drilling into Miami and the Miami market to understand a little bit more about where within a local market, and within the local market then looking at a distribution network. Do I have stores in the right location, outlets in the right location? Is the problem in this market that I don't have the right distribution network? And so again, it's being able to tie all this information together so that when you do this, you can look at where the issue or the behavior occurs, tie it if you've got a retail distribution network, look at your retail distribution, and then be able to look at these retail distribution points and say within maybe a 15-minute or a 10-minute drive time of these retail distribution points, what does the underlying market look like? So syncing information together and being able to derive the right information is kind of core to what really is relevant here. And that all goes back to kind of our base philosophy is making it look easy. And there's a lot of complex kind of analytics to go into creating a successful omni-channel segmentation structure or solution that can really support all this. But if you pay attention to those details, take care of the complexities, what you will get out of it is a solution that's understandable, it's usable, and it will provide the intelligence and the collateral and the information that you need as a marketer to drive your business forward. So, some of the things that we're looking for, kind of some of the important things kind of going forward, there is a lot of data and information behind these solutions, and it's tying all that information together in a meaningful way as core. Those databases, obviously, we all know, are not getting any smaller. They're definitely getting better, and people are talking about things called data lakes these days, which are just places where data is getting dumped, very unstructured. So for us, it's continuing to understand all of the types of information and data that are out there and how we can make it actionable through an effective analytics framework. A lot of times that goes back to being able to make the relevant identity linkages that you need in that data to tie things together, making sure that when you see information that's kind of flowing in to these environments, a big data environment, that you have a way to put it in a context that can be used to tie it back to this analytic structure that you've created around your core customers. And so it takes an intelligent approach to designing that analytics framework so that you can actually take advantage of all of this unstructured data. Again, attention to detail pays off down the road as you try to turn all these other data assets into actionable information. And so this is more about using and how we continue out with the philosophy of making it look easy. There are a lot of times are kind of multiple consumers of these kinds of analytic solutions. Some of them are power users, and they typically sit in an office and they're doing analytics and analysis, and they've got the big monitors that everybody envies, so to speak, in their organizations and want them, but they're not really mobile. The other audience, though, are people who are out in the field, people who are constantly wanting this information no matter where they're at, and so they're much more on a mobile device, a tablet, a smartphone, things of that nature. And so, we are spending and we invest a lot in the delivery platforms that we push out to our customers and clients. And so we look at those integrated delivery platforms and try to figure out how we can configure them to meet the needs of our clients. And one of them is to meet the needs of those with ever shrinking screen sizes, and making sure that we've got the reporting capabilities and the access to the information that somebody who's a field real estate person would be able to use, where they can move around in the field and just enter an address and get a report back that talks about the likelihood that this is a good location, or even so that when I'm in San Diego and on the beach, I can still do my job. So we need to have access to this information anytime, anywhere, and on any device. And so that's a priority, definitely, for our business. So to kind of go back and kind of reiterate some of the key takeaways, the things that really go into an advanced segmentation strategy and make it useful as an omni-channel solution for marketing. It really is this integrated approach to analytics, and it's paying attention to the things that are kind of core behind that. It's understanding that there are two types of information and data that are out there. There's the marketing dimension. It's the things that make somebody who they are. And then there's the analytics and the behaviors that are the things that, as a marketer, you're trying to influence or trying to understand so that you can influence those behaviors or better serve the customers. So it's bringing together those two dimensions. It's making it available in today's ever-changing world, where people expect real-time feedback. They expect the environment to be tailored based on the interaction that they're having with you at that point in time. So you need access to this information on a website, in the instance that somebody's on that website, in your call center, in the instance that that phone call is coming through. You can't have solutions that are static, that take time to create and don't evolve as your customers evolve. And along those lines, it has to cut across channels, and and you need to be consistently targeting people with a message that's appropriate. Again, linking together all of these separate pieces of information that you can collect about households so that you can tie it back to your customers to understand not just what people are like within inside your four walls, but tie it outside your four walls to paint that bigger picture of who they are. And then grounding, I said grounded to markets, but putting people in the appropriate context of where they're currently at. Be that online, be that offline, be it in a market, be it in a store, be it in a call center. You need to be able to tie the analytics back to how you're seeing them. You need to be able to understand and talk to folks or your customers anytime, anywhere, on the terms that they want that engagement to occur. So again, core philosophy, making it look easy, even though it's extremely complex, hitting that home run, and having a solution that takes care of all the complex mechanics that actually go in to delivering on that solution. That's core to what will make an advanced segmentation strategy really truly be successful.
Great. Thank you so much, Ken. In the interest of time, I'm going to jump right into a few of the questions received. The first one being, what are data requirements to create custom segmentation solutions? How big, how many records?
So good question. We hit upon this a little bit. I talked about the data sets that you're trying to tie together. Commonly people want to know, well, how many observations, how big does this data set need to be? And in that regard, you have to look at underlying stability, and kind of the coverage that you have in the database. When we're building these solutions with clients, one of the key inputs is their CRM database. That can range from several 100,000 to millions of kind of rows or pieces of information. But you can also tie in syndicated consumer research. So if you have a panel study, and that panel study has 5,000, 10,000 respondents, things like that. Again, that can be incorporated into these kinds of analytics frameworks. But what you have to look at and be smart about is the coverage. As the sample size of the data sets you're looking at tend to get smaller, you need to make sure that you're getting coverage across all the relevant dimensions, so that when you're making inferences off that data, you're not introducing unknown bias or kind of missing certain relevant information about them. But data sets can range in size from as small as 5,000, 10,000 records up to obviously millions and millions, 30, 40, 50, 60 million records. It's the linkages that you put in place and looking carefully at the coverages that are present that you need kind of the data science or the analytics or the stats folks to pay attention to, so that the outcomes, the behaviors, and the marketing intelligence that come out of that are going to be relevant. Okay,
great. And I'll do my best to pronounce this one, but what about other clustering methods such as k-means? Why not use them instead of agglomeration?
Yeah, so there are lots of products. There are lots of algorithms for classification, for categorization, for data mining, and going in and looking for meaningful relationships in kind of consumer behavior type databases. So it's a very good question, because K-means is one common approach to doing these kinds of things. But if you think about the underlying construct that we're doing here is, K-means and some of these solutions are just looking for relationships, right? They're, we call them like unsupervised learning. So you just look at a data set and you're telling the algorithm, go find interesting stuff in the data set. And from a data mining standpoint, that's a useful exercise. But in the exercise that we're talking about here, we know what we're trying to do. We're not just looking for the proverbial gold nugget in the data set. We actually know that we're trying to understand behaviors that we have data on. And we want to do that in the context of marketing. So there is a structure here that you can use to control the algorithm that you're using to create the segments. So that's why, instead of an unsupervised or an unstructured approach to learning, we take in, and the way that we're operationalizing this is through a more structured or a supervised learning process, where we are trying to predict behaviors based off those marketing dimensions. That is what this agglomerative process is doing. It's actually taking the structure and the objective that we have in mind and putting that on top of the data so that the outcomes have meaning for the marketing application that we're trying to solve here. K-means, you can put parameters in some control or some of these other unsupervised learning processes to do that, but it's not clear that you're going to get out solutions that are specifically meaningful in a marketing context or an analytics framework that you're trying to use for marketing. And so that's why we're much more focused on supervised learning processes. Agglomeration is one approach. There are other kind of supervised processes that you can get, cart-type processes, or multivariate classification type processes that will do that. So they'll set up kind of a loss function, or kind of have a criteria that you're trying to optimize based off of the set of characteristics that you're using to drive that optimization. So that's much more the structure that we try to bring into play here.
Okay, great. Question 3 here. I think it relates to the second question. How do you know it works?
Yeah. So it's an interesting question. So how do you know it works? Well, the proof usually is in the outcomes. I mean, up front, you can talk a lot and it can sound reasonable, but ultimately, this is analytics, and it's all about data, and it's about empirical outcomes. And so the how do you know it works comes in a couple of flavors. One is it can be based off of historical data and information, so back testing, you can call it that, but essentially taking historical outcomes, putting it in the context of an analytics framework, and then looking to see how well that framework performs to classify those outcomes. A lot of times this is, if you've heard like the terms test and target or training and validation data sets. So you kind of develop a solution based off of one set of data, and then you put it on top of another set of data to see that wasn't used in creating the solution, to see if you get the same results back, and kind of understanding the outcomes based off of that validation data set. And the analytics framework, I mean, how do you know if it works? Well, it should be able to tell you things that you already know. So that's a given outcome. And then once you kind of have confidence that it's reasonable in terms of telling you about these things that you already know, then you can start to use it to make inferences about things that you don't know. And so that's a lot of times when you're going outside of your customer file. You can build the structure, you can verify that it works internally, and then you can use it externally to kind of pull in those other behaviors. Again, the best way actually to ultimately figure out whether or not it's working is just to go beyond simply that case of back testing or looking at historical data, and then run use it to drive some campaigns or some marketing collateral that you're creating, and then go out and actually run it as a live campaign of course, and then capture what comes back out of that campaign. And a couple of things should happen. One is you should be able to predict somewhat the performance of that campaign if the solution is working, right? You should be able to make predictions that look like what you get back out of that. And then you should be able to look and do some analysis to understand if there are ways that you could optimize that campaign. So the analytics framework should be able to put things in a context to alter that campaign going forward.
Okay, great. I think we've got time for one more. What about attitudinal data? How does that fit in?
So attitudinal data fits into this structure, like the behaviors and such that you're trying to impact or put in a context. And so attitudinal information is very relevant and fits in with this underlying structure as something that you're trying to understand about consumers and households. One of the differences, though, in the structure that we create, the underlying analytics structure, goes back to actionability. So when you talk about attitudinal data, you could use attitudinal data as a fundamental component of creating segments and understanding your customers. And that does have value in terms of describing your customers or the folks that are in an attitudinal study. The shortcoming is actionability in those kinds of scenarios, because attitudinal solutions can only be implemented if you've got access to that underlying attitudinal data. And so the typical exercise that you go in is a process that tries to map an attitudinal solution into an analytics framework that's based off of the marketing dimensions that we talked about here. So the best way to kind of make sure that that's actionable is to kind of start with that up front and put the attitudes in the context of the marketing dimensions, and then you can look for separation or commonality of attitudes around marketing dimensions, as opposed to having to back it out at the end, where now you've got this attitudinal solution that isn't conforming well to the marketing characteristics that you can use to tie these solutions together.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Ken, and thank you to everyone in attendance this afternoon or this morning. That concludes today's presentation. If we weren't able to address your question, the team will follow up via email, and we'll have an on-demand recording of today's presentation to you in the next few days. Again, thank you.